Hello and welcome to another video here on Powerdojo. In this video, we're going to have a look at how you can create dynamic titles in your Power BI report. For this demonstration, we are going to use a dataset which has the Grand Slam wins by the Big Four in tennis. The Big Four, which are Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Djokovic, and Andy Murray. We have a line graph which shows the count of their Grand Slam wins over the years, and on the left side we have two slicers where we can filter the visual as per the selection that we make in both these slicers. Now if you were to have a look at the title of this report, it remains static irrespective of the selection that I make in either of the slicer. Now what if we were to have changing values for the title? Can we do that in Power BI? Yes, we can, and I'm going to show you in this demonstration right away. First of all, let's try to change this title. For that, what we're going to do is we're going to add a new measure. Let's call it title. Now we're going to have a look at each step one by one, how you can change the values in your title dynamically. First of all, I'm going to begin with selected value. I have made a separate video on this DAX function. You can check that out by clicking on the link at the top right over here. So selected value takes in column name as the argument. For that, we're going to choose this column where we have grouped these four Grand Slam winners. So I'm going to choose this and close the bracket. So as you can see, this measure has been added to our data model. Let's see what it shows us if we were to add it in a card visual. I will delete first of all this text. Let's say remove. I'll add a card visual like this and add the measure that we have just created, which is title. Now it's showing blank. It's obvious because I haven't made any selection in the slicers on the left. First of all, I'm going to just do some formatting changes. I'm going to remove the category label like this. And now let's see what happens if I do click on Rafael Nadal. So we'll see this title has dynamically changed as per my selection in the slicer. If I do select Roger Federer, it changes to Roger Federer. But if I do deselect all these four, you'll see it provides a blank title which we don't want to see. So we want to change this DAX function by adding the optional argument that we have for the selected value, where we can provide the alternate result if we haven't made a selection or we have made two selections in the slicer. So this is the text that we'll get if we are to close this bracket. You'll see this title has now changed to four selected players even though I haven't made any selection. Now if I had to click on Rafael Nadal, it changes to Rafael Nadal. If I had to click on Roger Federer, it changes to Roger Federer. If I had to click on Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, you will see now it is returning to us again the alternate result, which once again we don't want. We're going to have a look at how we can change that so we can see both the selections that we have made, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer. But before we do that, let's try to change this DAX measure furthermore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another line here. I'm going to nest this selected value DAX function in another DAX function, which is combine values. In combine values, we get to concatenate different expressions with a delimiter separating them. For the delimiter argument, I'm going to put in the dash. So this will be the delimiter. Now we have moved on to the expression one argument. Now let's say if I have to add Grand Slam count as a second argument like this, and now if I have to add another bracket at the end and say okay, you see there's no error. This DAX function is working just fine. Now you see it has returned us this result where we will always have Grand Slam count as the first text. Now if I do deselect, let's say Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal and choose Rafael Nadal, you see now it updates with Grand Slam count in the front and the player name. Now if you were to notice, as per the arguments that we provided to the DAX function combine values, it has only provided us the player name and not the tournament that we select in the second slicer. So how we can do that? It's not that difficult. What I'm going to do is now, first of all, copy this DAX function called title that we just created. I'll add a new measure, paste it, and change the name of this measure to title multi segments. Now, in order to get the tournament name, all we need to do is add another couple of expressions, such as, let's say, for the tournament, say comma, go to the next line, And what we want to do is we'll do something similar. We'll nest another selected value tax function which is similar to this. I'll copy it and paste it and only change the winner groups column name to tournament and the alternate argument from for selected players to for selected tournaments. We'll just add a comma over here so this error will go away. And now if I were to say OK, we'll see this DAX function has returned us no errors. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the input to the card visual from title to the title multi-segment DAX function that we just created. So choose that and let's make a selection like this: Rafael Nadal, US Open. And after a few formatting changes, you'll see you'll get both the player name as well as the tournament that we have selected. And for instance, if there is no selection in either of the slicer, we'll get the alternate result. For instance, if there are no players selected in the slicer for player name, you'll get 4 selected players. Now what we want to do is change the title for the visual that we have, the line graph, to be updated dynamically. So once again, what we're going to do is we're going to first of all copy the title tax function that we had created. Say new major, paste, we'll change the tax function name to title visual. We'll keep the delimiter as it is. We'll only just change the text from Grand Slam count to Grand Slam count progression by year, and we'll keep the rest as it is. We'll say OK. Since Power BI has returned us no errors, this means this DAX function is working just fine. We'll click on the visual, go to the formatting option. Now what we're going to do is we'll go in general. In the title option, you'll have this default text, which is Grand Slam count by year. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose this option of conditional formatting, where now we can select the major that we had just created called title visual. So the text that you see is updated dynamically. Henceforth, if I had to choose, let's say, Rafael Nadal, you see even the title for the line graph is updated as per the selection that you make in the player name slicer. So this was how you can have dynamic titles for your Power BI report when you make one selection. Yes, we have provided an alternate result when we have no selection or we have made multiple selections. But what if we want to see name of both the players, Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic, for instance, in our title? Unfortunately, selected value doesn't let you do that. There is a workaround that I'm now going to show you where we can have names of both these players. First of all, I'll deselect both the player names. I'm going to add a new measure. I'm going to call it title multi-selection. I'll go to the next line. I'll begin with the text Grand Slam count, which we had already provided in our previous DAX functions. Provide a space, move to the next line. I type in and, symbol and, where now we get to join two different strings, two different texts. So the workaround that I'm going to show you is called CONCATENATEX. Now CONCATENATEX takes in a table. Now instead of providing the Grand Slam champions table name itself, what we're going to do is by using the values tax function, we're going to filter it down to the selection that the user makes in the slicers. So in values, I have provided the winner groups as a table. So this is the first argument. Now we'll move on to the next argument, which is expression. I'll move to the next line and I'll type in one more time the winner group column. So whatever text that will appear will correspond to the selection that the user has made in the slicers. I'll put in a comma. Now, as you can see, I have moved on to the next argument, which is the delimiter. I'll go on to the next line, put in comma as a delimiter, put in a space, I'll put in a comma where we go on to the next argument, which is order by. So one more time, we need to order our selection by the selection that users will make in the slicers. So I will choose Grand Slam winner groups one more time. If I have to put a comma, you will see we have arrived at the last argument that it needs. The concatenate x tax function is whether we want to order it by ascending or descending order. So I'll choose ascending for this case. Going to the next line, I will close the bracket. So now you can see we have provided all the arguments that are required for our concatenate x tax function. If I have to say okay, let's see what happens. Power BI has returned us no errors, which means this tax function is working fine. Now what I'm going to do is once again change the card visual selection, the input for the card visual that we have used as the title, from title multi-segment to title multi-selection. Now you see, instead of all selected players, we have the name of all 4 players. Now what happens if I had to choose, let's say, Rafael Nadal? You see it has updated to Rafael Nadal. I have to select Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer. You see it is providing us names of all the selections that we have made. But in our data set, we are only using a field which has only 4 choices or 4 selections. You might have datasets in which you have multiple fields to select from. So this workaround might not help you. You need to keep this in mind while you are creating these dynamic titles. There is one more method in which you can create these workaround dynamic title measures is by selecting the quick measure option. And quick measure, you need to select a calculation to create a measure. So as per the default options that we have, you go in the text option and select concatenated list of values. Over here, the field that we're going to use is winner groups, and the number of values before truncation that we're going to select is 2. So now doing this, what will happen is Power BI will return you this measure, which will help you to truncate the fields that you choose if there are multiple fields, for instance. So what we'll do is we're going to choose this list of winner groups DAX function in our card visual. So I'll select the card visual and replace by the new measure that we have just created, list of winners, like this. So you'll see if I have to select, let's say, 3 selections in the player name, Power BI has truncated the text to only 2 of the selections, and the rest of them are represented as etc. So using these kind of measures and workarounds, you will be able to have dynamic DAX measures in your Power BI report. So that's all for this video. Let me know in the comments of what you thought about it. Do not forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.